Hi everyone, welcome to Body Empowerment. Thank you so much for joining us today. I have with me special guest Valerie Simon, who is a psychotherapist in private practice here in New York City and a practitioner and trainer of Psychodrama. So Valerie, welcome. Thank you for being here.
I'm really happy to be here.
Maybe a good place to start is sharing a little bit more about what you do, what it means to be a psychotherapist, and what is psychodrama.
I am a licensed clinical social worker, so I see clients. I have a private practice in the Union Square area of New York City, and I see individual clients. Primarily, my specialties are working with trauma and the relationship to addiction, how they kind of combine together for many of us. And I'm also a psychodramatist, which is a kind of experiential therapy which uses dramatic techniques and role-playing to really help people increase their creativity and spontaneity and really helps get trauma kind of up and out of your body so you can kind of live a more free, spontaneous life in the moment.
What you just said about getting trauma up and out of your body. Yeah. Can you talk more about that?
Sure. Trauma really gets stored in the body on a cellular level that, because of brain scans and things like that, now they literally know that. What happens is the frontal cortex, which is the more logical thinking part of the brain that we can use, like rational part of our brain, where we can kind of think things out and say, okay, I'm not really in danger right now. Everything's okay. I just have to cross the street and it's safe. Right. When that part of our brain shuts down, when we're like in a trauma response, we get more in the more primitive part of the brain, which is called the limbic system, which is that, the fight, flight, and there's also a freeze response that people talk about, where you don't feel safe in the moment. And it's like literally encoded in your brain in a different way. So this more logical thinking shuts down and you're kind of in this primitive part of your brain, kind of like a deer caught in the headlights. And that's when you're having like a trigger or trauma response. Just a word about trauma. It's not only, sometimes when people hear the word trauma, they think, well, I wasn't, a war victim, or I wasn't in 9/11 or something. Those are what we call big T traumas. But then there are just little t traumas that now has a term, which are more like relational traumas, where just say you grew up in a family where, you have an absent father and your mother's, say, an alcoholic or something like that. So you just, relationally, no one's there kind of taking care of your needs very well. So that's kind of more emotional, chronic, but no, you can't point your finger and say, oh, this terrible thing happened on this one day.
Right, right. One of the things I sometimes see happen when talking about and experiencing treatment and recovery and healing is that we get so caught up in the brain and the psyche and the emotions, and we actually forget about the body being part of the healing experience. So can you talk about that action with psychodrama?
In Eastern medicine, it's really all the same thing. The body and the emotions and the mind, it's all holistically one. We in the West kind of compartmentalize. It's like we're a head up here and a body down there, and never the two shall meet.
Yes.
And what I think psychodrama helps particularly with addiction, because addictions, when we think about it, are really action-oriented, right? It's, and when you talk to, say, a heroin addict, there's a whole ritual around, or an eating disorder, there are often rituals around, tying up or binging, whatever it is. And psychodrama being action-oriented, I think really helps people. It's like retraining your brain is to get away from the compulsive acting out behaviors to something that's actually using action to heal ourselves.
So what's the experience of psychodrama like? What is it?
Yeah.
What is it
like,
to
what
experience?
Is
what is it? What does it feel like? What does one do?
Psychodrama is a 3-part system. There's a warm-up, and then action part, and then sharing. It starts with a warm-up where you literally warm up to whatever the topic is that you want a group to be working on. So, in workshops I'm doing one about performance anxiety and stage fright. So I'd be asking certain questions about people's experience. I'll ask a question and do something called a spectrogram, where it's like you pretend there's an imaginary line across the floor, and I might say on a scale of 1 to 100, how scared do you get when you're about to go on stage?
Okay.
And so then you literally place yourself somewhere on that imaginary line, from, terror on one end to I'm really comfortable on the other end, and everywhere in between.
Okay.
So it gets the body engaged, and you do lots of warm-ups, and it also does a lot of group building for people to talk to each other and feel comfortable and find kind of your double. The action part is like the psychodrama itself, where you one person becomes the protagonist, and then the protagonist chooses people to play roles. I, as a therapist, am called the director. It's a little different than typical therapy, right?
Sure.
And I sort of guide the protagonist through this journey of their kind of inner story. We do wacky things in psychodrama. You might do something like enact a part of yourself or a feeling, talk to your rage, talk to your fear. It can be talk to yourself as a 4-year-old. So you'd have someone play that role for you, or someone play the role of anger for you. Or it could be talk to your addiction, what works well in the addictions field. Not always, but sometimes people have a kind of cathartic experience where in the process of going through this role playing, it gets to some deep emotions that you might not even realize were somewhere in there, stored in the body, like we were saying earlier. And then it kind of consolidates things and you integrate. And then there's kind of a wrapping up of everything, and you can kind of, because where we've had traumas, we kind of, a little bit of us gets frozen there, even on like a cellular level. So it helps free up, say the 4-year-old who had some kind of emotional trauma. When you interact with that 4-year-old inside yourself, like concretizing it, putting it, embodying that part of you, it really can help kind of let you move beyond it. It's like it frees up that energy.
Yeah.
Right? After that experience and you complete the psychodrama, then there's a sharing portion where everyone else in the group who experienced it and all the other people who played roles get to share their own personal experience of what it was like to watch and to witness or to play a role in, and how they related from their own life experience. So the protagonist gets to kind of just be a sponge and take all of that in. And it also helps them kind of reintegrate into the group, because you're almost, this not to sound dramatic, but like you're in a little bit of an altered state when you're, a protagonist and kind of delving into these parts of yourself, right? And putting them out on a therapeutic stage. So it really helps you integrate and also realize like we all can relate to each other's feelings.
Yes.
Even if we don't have the same story, because we all have a unique story, we all can relate to, I know what it's like to feel scared, right? I know what it's like to feel lonely. I know what it's like to feel vulnerable. I know what it's like to be angry.
Yes.
Right?
How can psychodrama be an efficient, welcoming, a necessary tool for people struggling not just with eating disorders but body image?
Yeah, I think psychodrama in part, like what we talked about, it engages the body with action. Mm-hmm. And also, I think, there's so much shame involved with having body image issues or an eating disorder or full-blown eating disorder. And one of the parts, first of all, you get to, you might literally have someone play your eating disorder, and you interact with it and you switch roles with it and give it a life, because, so much is the secrecy and the shame and the, privacy of an eating disorder. So it's out there for you to see, but then for everyone else to experience as well. Wow. And then when you hear sharing, when you get to receive, I think it really can heal some of the shame, because it's like, I can relate to that. I used to hide that I, took candy bars and put them under my pillow at night, or whatever someone's story is. In the shadows, the shame is so much bigger. And so when it's out in the light and we all have it, that it really helps heal it.
So how can people find you and get involved with what you're doing?
Yeah, I have a website, so you can find me online, and also on Facebook and Twitter.
Great.
Yeah.
And any upcoming events?
I do. I have a series of workshops called the Inner Stage, which are experiential workshops using psychodrama, designed to help performers increase creativity and spontaneity. And I have an upcoming one on April 22nd, very soon, called Stage Fright and How to Manage It. So for everyone who's interested, you can look on my website, and it also will be posted on Facebook and Twitter as well.
Wonderful. I have been to an Inner Stage workshop, and I encourage you to check it out. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Thank you again for being here, for sharing your presence, your energy, everything.
My pleasure.
And I will see you next time on Body Empowerment. And in the meantime, please subscribe to my channel and check out all of the amazing work Valerie Simon is doing online and in life, in action. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks again.